Welcome to the Supply Chain Dialogue Season 2, Episode 17. I'm Daniel Helmig. This is the final installment of Season 2, while Season 3 will focus more on supply chain sustainability. We thought we would end this episode with a bang. In the last episode, we talked about some of the best functional books we recommend. One of the books was actually a fiction novel called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Servin, named by both Amazon and New York Times as book number 1 of the year. The book is, if you remember, about gaming and the gaming industry. I mentioned that after reading the book, I had a much better understanding and appreciation about this industry, and that it is dwarfing the entertainment industry of the Netflix and Walt Disneys of the world. We got a lot of feedback after the episode, and many wrote to us that they either had no idea that there can be a good book about this topic, or just sharing similar sentiments than I had. We thought then, let's do in the last session in this season another interview, peeling the onion of gaming and gaming industry a bit further, providing the older listeners a different view into the topic, and hopefully, how about a few facts that you can use at dinner conversation? And for the younger listeners, as always, an opportunity to agree or disagree or correct our statements. I asked an expert with 20 years of experience in gaming and an academic focus on gaming and computer science to join me for the show. He did not have to come from far, since during the final year at St. Gallen University to obtain his master's in computer science, he spends the weekends in our house. Noah, welcome again to the show.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
You are with us since the beginning of our advisory. It started with the design and redesign later of the webpage, content development of some of the training sessions that we use with our clients. And you're the person as well behind the production of this podcast and its publication. And when you're not working here, you are very involved in the gaming side and quite knowledgeable in the subject of trends of the gaming industry. So I thought we get the 10-question format as well going for you, and start with something of the stuff that is right up your alley. So if you're ready, here's the first question.
Go for it.
What elements are crucial in making a game truly engaging for players?
It depends. More broadly speaking, there are elements that can be applied to every type of game. For example, how the user interface or UI is built, how smooth it is, / how intuitive it is. Another thing that's very important is movement, allowing the player to be able to express themselves in the way that they would like to, with the character allows the players to be more engaged.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on this UI thing?
Of course, the UI has a lot of information that tells you many different things. For example, how many lives you have or where you are on the map. It's the elements that are outside of the game that you still need to move around. Coming back to what makes games engaging, there are also many different genres of games, so you also have to understand where your market is. You have to look at pre-existing games that have been praised and maybe apply new ways to engage with your game, clearly without any copyright infringement, obviously. Since games are evolving very fast, you need to be on your toes and need to be able to adapt to major changes, even in the middle of your design and development process.
Wow, there's some hyper competition going on there. From my experience in the automotive industry, changes in the midstream of R&D or production processes are frowned upon, since they open all doors to quality issues.
Unfortunately, that is the same in the gaming industry. So many games are what you call bananas, shipped early, then they are left to ripen with the customers. The number of quality issues in new game launches, to the extent that they break whole companies, is huge.
But there are solutions for this. But let's stay on the overview a bit longer and go to the second question. Can you shed light on the most profitable sectors within the gaming industry globally and why they stand out?
The elephant in the gaming industry is definitely mobile gaming. Mobile gaming is by far the most profitable sector in gaming. People really just like having things on the go. Playing for short periods of time is really sought after by a lot of gamers, or the average Joe, in the train or during a break. Now, this isn't to write off console gaming or PC gaming, but mobile gaming is a market that has been designed in a very specific way that makes it very profitable and keeps players coming back every single week, day, or hour.
So that's the Candy Crush thing, right?
Exactly. Candy Crush is definitely one of the front runners for that. But it's also important to look at other things. Other types of mobile games in that respect, like the very popular genre of gacha games. which comes from the Japanese gacha system, where you put a quarter into a machine and you receive a small plastic ball, and in that ball, there's a randomized prize. Each of these balls has a different percentage of a unique prize inside of them, and players seek the prizes that are usually at percentages of 0.01%, and this incentivizes a lot of spending in them.
I know the analog version well from my childhood. The machines were at the fuel stations near the Autobahn in Germany and in restaurants and supermarkets, and a major attraction for us kids. So I get the draw of concepts like this. Well, I know that they are called gotcha, even in English, quite revealing.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular systems you'll find. You'll see another word used for it being a loot box system, where you can pay for a box of some kind, and the prizes inside are generally more cosmetic. However, for games, let's just take a popular one here of Honkai Star Rail that came out quite recently. You can roll for a character, and the character itself is actually quite important and has very unique gameplay attributes that are sought after by players.
Interesting that the loot box prices are more cosmetics like armor, weapon, or clothing, besides potions, spells, and what have you. Clearly not something that you can expect in a ball at an Autobahn fueling station. Okay, let's go to the question number 3. Could you discuss some of the more popular games right now and regarding player base and revenue and what makes them stand out in your opinion?
Let's take a look at the game I just mentioned, Honkai Star Rail. Honkai Star Rail is a mobile game. Technically, it's both a PC console and mobile game, so it covers a lot of bases, but it mainly focuses on the mobile aspect of it, where it is a live service game. And those games are games that are updated quite regularly, which makes players keep coming back to them. With new content coming out, the game incentivizes players to return after they've finished the pre existing content. They will either spend money on the gacha system, or they will just play for free. And other live service games also have a system known as a battle pass, where I'm sure you've heard of Fortnite before.
Sure.
Fortnite was one of the first players to really bring this into the light. And it's the idea that you have this progression system where you level up. And each level you gain a reward. And there are two different sides to that. There's a free variant where players don't have to spend any money for it, but they only get select rewards from that battle pass. But then you also have the option to spend money on the battle pass that allows you to receive rewards every single level, and each level has rewards that you can show off to your friends.
And that makes a lot of money?
Oh, unbelievable amounts of money. It really hinges on a sense of fear of missing out or FOMO, because these battle passes don't stay around for a long period of time. They generally only stay for the season that the game is being played in. And people generally want to get the skins or the items or whatever it is that might be gone in 1 to 2 weeks.
And skins are clothing and different character features, right?
Exactly. It's a weird way to say it, but it's an established term.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about the overall setup of the gaming market. What are the main areas of revenue?
I recommend listeners to Google this and look at some of the infographics. The growth is pretty interesting. Mobile gaming is definitely the front runner at around 100 billion in revenue, followed by PC at 45 billion and console revenue at around 30 billion. And it's quite interesting to see how mobile dwarves both of these two. Back in the day when I was younger, no one was mobile gaming, it was just generally console or PC. But these massive changes in preferences tend to happen regularly in the gaming industry. Just think about arcade games. They used to be massive, and nowadays, no one really uses them as much.
Yeah, I still remember Pong and the games that you could play on the Atari station, and that I spent most of my pocket money on Donkey Kong in shady game halls. And even then, some of my friends could not stop and sank all their money into becoming the savior of the princess. Now, I saw a similar graphic as well recently in preparation for the show, which completely floored me. About 54% of all global players are in Asia Pacific, and that's where as well most of the mobile games are happening, right?
Yeah, mobile gaming is really big in Asia. The one thing that I've looked into personally is the Japanese mobile gaming industry. And it's as large as it is because of commuters and being able to just have a few minutes of downtime that you can use for something that you enjoy. In Europe and the US, besides Switzerland, the public transportation system doesn't have similar quality. So people take the cars, which is clearly not conducive for gaming. And that's really what a lot of the mobile gaming market is trying to tap into. It's these little time periods that people have.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the different players that we have in the market and what is particular with this kind of industry.
One of the main players in this market is Tencent, which is a publicly traded Chinese company. This kind of shows the size of the mobile gaming market in Asia. Then you go on to Sony, which of course includes their hardware revenue as well as the many studios underneath them that are making AAA games. Then you have Microsoft, NetEase, another Chinese company, Electronic Arts or EA, Activision Blizzard, and Nintendo are some of the main publicly traded companies. But many gaming companies with significant revenues are actually privately owned. So, for example, 343 Industries, the development studio currently working on the Halo series, is privately traded. A company that made my favorite game series, that being Persona, is Atlas, which is a privately owned company in Japan. And the game studio that made one of the biggest games in 2022, being Elden Ring, is FromSoft, and they are also privately held.
So it seems that these companies can scale significantly without needing outside money, which makes perfect sense based on the nature of the product they sell. Let's move on with our set of questions. So, in your experience, how are augmented reality and virtual reality enhancing the gaming experience? Could you share any innovative uses of these technologies?
At the moment, I would say that augmented reality and virtual reality have minimal current uses. VR relies heavily on gimmicks, and no one has fully found a path yet to making a really engaging game for the masses. One example of a VR game that really stands out to me would be Beat Saber. In this game, you have two lightsabers, like in Star Wars, attached to your hands, and you can slash through blocks in time with music. So it's a rhythm game, which I found to be a very unique way to use VR. Another example of a VR game that's bringing a more story driven experience would be Half Life Alyx. That came out not too long ago by Valve Studios. It really showed how you would be able to create a AAA VR game, but a lot of these games are definitely outliers, and there hasn't really been much innovation yet in the area. However, with things like the Apple Vision Pro coming out, there's definitely more accessibility for developers to work with new emerging technologies, and these kinks will definitely be ironed out over time. For example, with the Vision Pro, you're able to walk on stage during a live concert and experience what the artist sees, like recently with Alicia Keys and a few others. This ability is right out of the gaming world, but now transposed into a real life experience. So, gaming and entertainment in real life are fusing through this new technology. And this isn't new, but the speed of the change is on a completely different scale. The same thing applies to augmented reality as well, where a lot of the applications have additions that are unique, but they don't necessarily add much to the gameplay. So, for example, if we take Pokemon Go, which is one of the biggest mobile games in the world, it has an augmented reality integration, allowing you to take pictures of your environment with your Pokemon or catch them in your environment. However, past that, there's no real gameplay, but I'm very interested to see how that goes in the future.
Yeah, I still remember a couple of years ago when I think we were in Copenhagen. It was just the start of this craze, and suddenly all the kids were running around with their mobile phones in front of them. They engaged with the environment through their camera on the mobile and their screen, and then they were bumping into each other and they were trying to catch the Pokemons one at a time.
Besides the gaming industry, there are a lot of applications of augmented reality technology to the real world where this can spill over or actually be developed in something else.
You worked on something like this in your studies, didn't you?
Yeah, so in the second year of my master's, I created a mixed reality application where the user would be able to put on these mixed reality glasses and move up to an ATM where the screen would then be projected towards the person themselves. And this was done in order to help specifically wheelchair users to be able to access displays in their daily lives that they struggle to interact with. We chose ATMs because from the research and interviews that we did, it seemed like a place where wheelchair users required help.
I really like that one. Now let's talk about again a little bit more of the revenue side of the gaming industry. You taught me something about the concept of whales in gaming. Can you explain that and their impact on game development and revenue models?
Of course. So, whales refer to players who spend significantly more than the average player on in game purchases. They contribute quite a substantial portion of a game's revenue, between 50 to 90% of the total revenue.
Wow.
And this typically makes up a very small percentage of the game's player base, being around 2% to 5% of spenders, which translates to around 0.1% of all players playing the game. Whales are generally known for high engagement levels and a lot of logins, and they spend a lot of time in the game. They often are generally crucial for the financial success of mobile games.
Amazing. And you mentioned there are sometimes, even for mobile games, people who spend tens of thousands of dollars on this kind of token, right?
Yeah, of course, it's pretty fascinating because I have a few friends who play a lot of mobile games, and seeing their spending habits and comparing these to people who have spent hundreds of thousands on these types of games is a very different ballgame. A highly profitable ballgame.
I can see that. But why not? Is there in gaming something like a skill based Teflon effect? So, do you see parallels between skills or experiences gained in gaming that can be transferred into real life? And do you have a couple of examples for that?
Of course, I would say one of the biggest ones, especially with multiplayer games, is team building. Being able to work together as a team in order to complete an objective is very important. Another one, if you're looking at single player games, would be puzzle solving, or just being able to figure out something from different angles. Personally, something that video games have definitely taught me is determination and stamina. There's this game that I played around 2 years ago called Hollow Knight, which is a very difficult game. And I was always, prior to the game, very prone to giving up whenever I was met with any sort of resistance, but I really liked this game. And it challenged me to try repeatedly until I could beat the boss.
So, the boss? Who is the boss? And why do you have to beat him?
Oh, I'm not telling you to go beat up a CEO or something, just to make that clear. No, so a boss in this case would be a general antagonist in the story that is being presented to you. And that learned skill of staying on course still helps me nowadays with games going forwards. I give up way less than I used to. And even in real life, I give up way less easily than I used to before playing this game.
Now, you put already a little bit of a personal touch on your answer. So, let's talk about your ideas with regard to your upcoming dissertation on three-dimensional gaming theory. What inspired the focus on gaming technology instead of, for example, cybersecurity? What impact do you hope to make?
Since an early age, I've been a fan of games, and I've always wanted to see how I'd be able to bridge my enjoyment of games to my academics. My project is about taking the explorative properties of big open world games and applying those to real life applications.
So that's Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, this kind of thing?
Exactly, and being able to see if I can apply the things found in games in order to make the experience of these map type apps more appealing or more explorative for the user. And my specific approach is to take what these games do in order to incentivize users to explore the map and see if we can apply these to apps and maybe even down the line find a way to monetize this as well.
Ah, interesting. So that could be a real Teflon effect right there. Now, going back to the larger gaming industry, what are the emerging trends that you believe will shape the gaming industry over the next decade?
Well, I'm convinced that mobile is going to stay on top. I think that people are really looking for a quick fix every once in a while through gaming, but I also think that the market is going to look into delivering bigger experiences on the platform. You can already see this with games such as Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact, which are definitely more so traditional games than they are mobile games as we know them. I would say that trends for console and PC gaming are harder to predict as trends come and go quite quickly. But currently, there seems to be a larger push for interactive, cooperative games. We see this recently with Helldivers 2 or Lethal Company, which have seen quite large success in the last few months.
You mentioned that the trends are difficult to predict from that perspective. I remember that there was something about Warner Brothers had a discussion on as well in the same topic. What was it all about?
Yeah, they were talking about Hogwarts Legacy, which is a game that was released in 2023, and it had quite a large success. You probably know, we gave it to you for Christmas. And then Warner Brothers, they were comparing that success to their most recent game, Suicide Squad, which was a live service game. Live service games generally have better monetization because it asks the player to come back quite regularly, and there's more opportunity for the player to spend on the game. However, the success of Hogwarts Legacy over Suicide Squad shows that there's an interest in creating bigger experiences that players can spend lots of time into rather than money on something that they can play for just an hour a day. But Warner also said that they're not just going to focus on these big experiences, they're also going to be putting a focus on the mobile gaming sector as well. That was very interesting to hear from a US entertainment company, Different than in the old entertainment industries of movies, in gaming, the intellectual and revenue dominance is not captured more or less in America. Gaming is a multipolar geographic market, which is good for competition and innovation, I think.
Now, coming to the last question, or imagining a fairy godmother and she would grant you one wish regarding the future of gaming, what would it be?
Well, when it comes to the current state of gaming, one thing that I noticed and I talked about before is how many games come out in an unfinished state, the bananas that we were talking about. Many games need multiple updates before they are playable. And I think one of the things that I learned here with you and our clients is that proven operations management techniques and good implementations of processes like Six Sigma, Lean, TOC could lead to better game launches. So I think that would be my wish to her then. Being able to implement these, and I'm sure this would lead to better game launches, and I'm sure it would delight the customer base and in the end, me as well.
So let's hope that some people in the gaming industry listen to that and take a look eventually at some of the former podcasts that you helped produce and we have done with regard to how to revolutionize quality delivery and full operations in other industries, which are applying as well to the gaming industry. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate that you moved in front of the microphone this time and gave us an overview of the gaming industry from your perspective.
No problem. I'm always happy to be on.
With that, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues. If you did, please subscribe on any major podcast platform. If you'd like to get in contact with us, have suggestions or criticisms, send us an email to dialogues@helmicadvisory.com, one word. You can help us when you share this episode or the whole podcast with a colleague, friend, or decision maker. And for this episode specifically, clearly a decision maker in the gaming industry. We take a short break to develop the content and invite guests for the next season, focusing on supply chain redesign to curb greenhouse gas emissions and drive sustainability into the value chain. Stay safe, be bold, and see you now in 4 weeks. These are the Supply Chain Dialogues, produced again by Noah Helmick and copyrighted by Helmick Advisory AG in 2024.